You ever hear the sound of someone's heels cracking against weathered wood first thing in the morning? I'm telling you, that sound will snap you out of a good mood quicker than a rifle shot over a glassy lake. That's how my day started. I'm standing there on my dock, coffee in hand, watching the mist curl off the water like it's got nowhere else to be, and bam, here she comes. Fuchsia suit, platinum hair, diamonds on every finger, marching toward me with the kind of confidence that says, I've never heard the word no, and you're not about to teach me. She stops just short of my toes, chin tilted so far back I'm surprised she didn't tip over. Me. I'm in my uniform flannel shirt, old jeans, boots still caked in mud from checking fence lines. To her, I probably look like a squatter, and I guess that was her first mistake. Because she opens with, your lodge is on my land. You have 72 hours to vacate or I'm calling the sheriff. Dead serious, like she'd just delivered the verdict in a murder trial. Now, I'll tell you, there are 1,000 ways I could have answered. But all I did was sip my coffee, let the bitterness settle on my tongue. Ma'am, I said, calm as Sunday, you just threatened to evict me from a property I've legally owned for 10 years. And you did it right there on camera. I gave a little nod toward the security camera tucked up under the cabin eve red light blinking away. That flicker of doubt in her eyes was gone almost before it showed up, but it was there. Then she whipped open her clipboard, heavy cream paper official letterhead, looked like something you'd get from the governor, and started reading off a list of improvements and community investments, like I should start packing my bags right then. She made sure I knew her last name Ashworth, and that her family had their hooks in every courthouse for 50 miles. My cousin is the county judge. My husband chairs the regional bank. She leaned in like she was letting me in on a secret. Whatever paperwork you think you have, it won't matter. Nothing ever does against us. If you've ever watched a bully get a taste for the sound of their own voice, you'll know what I mean. But see, I wasn't born yesterday. I watched her the way I used to watch suspects when I carried a badge, a twitch here, a flared nostril there. She liked this confrontation intimidation. That moment her target realized the rules didn't apply to her. And maybe that had worked before. But she had no idea who she was up against. She brings up the original owner, Maxwell Thornberry, tells me he abandoned the property, went to federal prison, you know. That's when I stopped her. Pulled out a little laminated card edges, worn soft after 10 years in my wallet. Maxwell didn't abandon anything. He lost it to me. I handed her the deed transfer, certified, witness, notarized. Won in a poker game Atlantic City 10 years ago. That's right, 7-card stud. Not even a good hand, but I read Maxwell better than he read himself. Now I can see you leaning in. Who in their right mind bets a lakefront lodge on a pair of 7s? Well, sometimes you don't need a strong hand. Sometimes you just need to know when someone else is bluffing. And Cordelia, she was bluffing now too. But she just didn't know I could see it. She tried to pivot, claimed it changes nothing started in on paperwork and community investments. I pointed out real polite that I'd love to see the signatures on those documents, especially the ones supposedly signed by folks who couldn't possibly have signed them. That's when her mask cracked, just for a second before she turned and strode off, leaving me on the dock with a cold cup of coffee and a story that was just getting started. Now I know what you're thinking. Who waits 10 years to claim a piece of property? Well, let me back up a sec. That poker game in Atlantic City, Maxwell laid the deed on the table like a man making a sacrifice. 10-year deferred possession tax reasons can't touch it until the decade's up. Truth is, he knew he was going to prison. He figured by the time the clause expired, he'd be long gone. And he was right. A couple months after I won the deed, the feds picked him up for securities fraud. But I'm not the kind of man who jumps to conclusions, not anymore. Not after what happened in Ohio back in 2012. The Hartwell case. I won't bore you with all the details, but let's just say I was young, hungry, and convinced I could spot a criminal from a mile away. Turned out the real criminal skipped town, and I ended up ruining a widow and her daughter by mistake. I quit the badge after that. Spent 10 years learning the difference between evidence and instinct, between being right and thinking you're right. Every year I paid the taxes on that lodge. Every year I sent notarized letters to the county notice of absence, not abandonment. Every year I got little reports from a remote monitoring service. Minor structural changes observed, increased seasonal activity. Property appears well maintained. I chalked it up to nosy neighbors or county maintenance. I didn't want to see what was really happening. I was so scared of making another mistake, I nearly missed the fact that someone had been running a business on my land. When I finally got out to Michigan, I found the lodge repainted, new windows, new furniture, hot tub on the deck, none of it mine. Out front, big sign, Lakeside Retreat available for booking. Contact Painrest Shores HOA. I Googled it. Airbnb listing, 847 reviews, $450 a night. Do the math. Someone made over $1 million renting my place and never bothered to ask my permission. So I went down to the county courthouse dressed like any guy looking for a building permit. Asked for the property records parcel 7429003. The clerk, Juniper, handed over 2 files. My original deed properly transferred in 2014 and a second administrative transfer to the HOA in 2017, signed by Maxwell Thornberry while he was still in prison. Not only that, the notary on the second transfer had died 2 years before the signature date. You see where this is going. That's when I knew it wasn't just my lodge. I asked Juniper to keep digging quietly. Meanwhile, I paid a visit to Gus Mercer, local handyman, unofficial historian. He told me Cordelia started running the place right after Maxwell went away. Said she convinced the HOA board that abandoned properties were liabilities. Funny how that word liability starts showing up whenever someone wants to take what isn't theirs. Gus told me there were other families too, folks who lived out of state, people in nursing homes. Same playbook every time. Fake paperwork, forged signatures, no owner notification. And nobody ever fought back because her husband controlled the bank, her cousin was the judge, the sheriff was in her pocket. We just try to survive, Gus said. But I wasn't about to let this go. That afternoon, 4 deputies rolled up, tried to serve me an emergency eviction notice. I showed them my deed, pointed out the forgery, even told them their sheriff was on a hot mic, telling them to just get him off the property. When I pointed to the body camera and mentioned federal civil rights lawsuit, the lead deputy suddenly got real nervous. Told me they always win around here. I just smiled and said, they've never lost to someone like me. Next day I called in a favor. Roz, the best forensic accountant I ever knew, flew in from D.C. We spent hours digging through financials. Turns out Cordelia was funneling HOA rental income into her own management company, underreporting revenue, pocketing the difference, laundering money through shell companies in 3 states. But that wasn't the worst of it. There were regular wire transfers, always the same days, far more money than the rentals could ever explain. So I asked Gus about the boats. The ones docking at my pier at 3 a.m. twice a month for 6 years. Crates and crates out, gone by morning. Gus hadn't reported it, who would he tell? But I had cloud backups from old security cameras. Suddenly it all made sense. The lodge wasn't just a cash cow, it was a transit point in a much bigger operation. Roz said if you file on property fraud first, you get your lodge back, they go to jail for tax evasion and embezzlement, and then the feds can take their time unraveling the rest. We put the case together, 17 properties, $4.2 million in real estate theft, $2.4 million in unexplained deposits, hundreds of forged documents, enough to kick over an empire. Cordelia called an emergency HOA meeting, sure she'd humiliate me in front of the whole community. I let her go first, parading my photo on the projector, spinning stories about community assets and outsiders. Then I took the stage. Slide after slide, my deed tax receipts proof Maxwell was in prison during the transfer forensic analysis of the forgery, the dead notary's stamp showing up 2 years after he passed the Airbnb listing the shell companies the missing money. When I finished, the room erupted. People were shouting, demanding answers. Cordelia tried to regain control, but it was too late. That's when the real feds arrived, IRS, DEA, the whole alphabet. Cordelia and Reginald Ashworth were arrested on the spot, hauled away in separate vehicles. The sheriff got 3 years for obstruction. The judge lost his license. Dozens of accomplices were rounded up across 4 states. You want a moral? I'll give you one, but don't expect it to sound like a sermon. Justice isn't about who's the loudest or who's got the fanciest suit or even who knows the right people. It's about patience, about being willing to wait 10 years for the right moment, building your case piece by piece and not making a move until you're sure. It's about learning sometimes the hard way that the people who look the weakest might just be the ones holding all the receipts. 6 months later, every stolen property was returned. Gus got elected HOA president unanimously, I might add. They held a community barbecue to celebrate. I brought potato salad. Nobody even complained about the taste. The best part, one evening as the sun set gold over my dock, I got a call from Margot Hartwell, the daughter from Ohio. She told me her mom had passed, but before she died, she'd hoped I'd find a way to fix what I broke, even if it wasn't for them. Maybe you did, Margot said. Maybe you're trying. I didn't feel forgiven, not exactly. But for the first time, I felt like I deserved to try again. So what do you think? Was that justice? Was it karma? Or was it just a stubborn old man who refused to be run off by a bully in a fuchsia suit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand. Where's the line between protecting what's yours and going too far? Ever had something taken from you and had to fight like hell to get it back? I want to hear your story. If you made it this far, you're part of the reason stories like this matter. Thanks for listening wherever in the world you are. And if this hit home, share your take below. Justice isn't always clean, but when it lands, you feel it right down to your boots.